Howdy there, Young and the Silver Mongoose here, back again for another episode of Gaming Favorites. And what that is basically I sit down with somebody or a few people from the YouTube gaming community or people I know in real life, and we discuss something that we love in video games. It could be a specific genre, a company, developer, or any sort of specific aspect about video games. And today, my guest is Muragaru. Is that correct? Muragaru?
That is correct. Muragaru, yeah.
I'll just call you Taylor because it's a lot easier to remember. Why don't you tell us a little bit just about yourself so people who don't know who you are know a little bit about you?
Sure. Yeah, my name on YouTube is Muragaru553, and I have a bunch of different videos. I live in Japan. I've been teaching here for a little over 3 years now, actually. It's hit the 3 years, 2 month mark, and when I do have time, I play games or I make videos for YouTube, and I like long walks on the beach, holding hands. I don't. So,
All right.
I guess the other thing is I as well have a podcast that I host with somebody else, and a little bit different, and it's called Power On Podcast. So if you like listening to podcasts, check it out.
Yeah, I'll post a link to that in the bottom here. And I do have to thank you for making the time because, Taylor is in Japan, so he had to get up early on his Sunday and just to make this happen. I think we've been trying to get a day together for like 2.5 or 3 months now. It's really hard to get two people together to do this, so I have to thank you again.
No, definitely. Thanks for inviting me on. I know it's been a little difficult because of the time difference and stuff, but yeah, I had to get up early. I think I will survive. It's
Excellent. So today's topic is RPGs, and it's more of the traditional turn-based kind of JRPG kind of thing we're going to be talking about. So we won't really be talking about like Mass Effect or I don't know, whatever sort of Western or modern RPGs people.
Dragon Age.
Yeah, Dragon Age and things like that. Not only because I don't really have much experience about them, but we want to narrow it down a little bit. And I think that's the thing I preferred. I don't know if that's the kind of RPG you prefer as well, I'm assuming.
I gravitate more towards JRPGs. Not only turn-based, but a few of the other styles, like the kind of the actiony, I don't know, real-time
Right.
battles like Tales
Right, that's what I was going to say, like Tales.
or another one which is I guess adventure, so kind of like Terranigma or Ys. I I tend to really like those. I like most of the RPGs that come out of Japan, or at least the styles of them.
Okay, cool. That's more what I gravitate towards as well. I mean, I find that like a lot of modern RPGs or Western style RPGs are games with RPG elements. They're not so much RPGs, even though they claim to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could definitely make the case for JRPGs too. I feel that a lot of Western games that are kind of built up as RPGs, Mass Effect not included because they actually tried to be a bit different, but a lot of RPGs in the West seem to follow the Tolkien kind of high fantasy
Hmm.
vibe, which I'm okay with. I don't mind, but it's to me, it's playing a JRPG. It feels like it has a bit more creativity to it. I don't, because it's just there's times where it's definitely not the case.
Yeah, I was
It
gonna
seems
say a
like
lot of
they're trying
people.
to make a whole new world and different things going on, as opposed to just taking orcs and elves and fairies.
Yeah, yeah, maybe. I mean, from somebody outside looking in here, JRPGs to me probably seem more cliched than other RPGs. But I mean, you've probably played. I don't know how many RPGs you've played. Probably dozens and dozens. So you probably have a broader spectrum. Whereas over in the West, you usually only hear of like the big ones. I guess that would make it outside of Japan.
Well, that's kind of why I hesitated a little bit to say that it's more creative. It's just more the worlds feel a bit more unique as opposed to where it feels really grungy and it feels very medieval
Right.
esque.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So, but I don't mind those games. It's just if I wanted to have those kind of experiences, I would prefer to actually read high fantasy novels.
Hmm.
So that gets my kicks more than playing a game that fits into that kind of setting. So
That makes sense. So, to kind of kick things off, I'll do what I always do in these talks, and I'm going to ask you about, for you, where did it all begin with RPGs? It's a good place to
uh,
start.
for gaming or my love of RPGs,
It could be both.
both.
Yeah, go on ahead.
Well, for gaming, I don't actually remember, but allegedly I was 3 years old and would play Mario Brothers at my family's friend's house, and I took a liking to games from there. I guess what would happen was I would play the games, and then when I went home, I would take Legos and recreate the different like Mario worlds
Hmm.
and stuff, and I have no recollection of this at all.
Well, it's good that you have people to tell you, because like my parents, I'll ask them like, "What was I like when I was a kid? You know what did I do? What were some of my quirks?" And they're like, "I don't know. You were a kid. You know, you were noisy, and you ate stuff, and you bothered us. Like, what do you want?"
So, well, that's where I guess I get where gaming first kind of entered into my life, which I don't remember at all. But love for RPGs started with the original Final Fantasy on the regular Nintendo, and my father used to play it as well, and he's really young. My dad was 19 and turned 20 after I was born, so
Hmm.
he's a pretty young guy, and he would play the a little bit of the game, and I would kind of sit and watch him and play a little bit too. And unfortunately, I want to say about either sometime within a year, my parents divorced, and he left, and he did not come around, and I did not see him for about 3 years. It was at first I did see him a bit, but then he was kind of gone for 2 years or so.
Hmm.
And during that time, I really attached to the game because I guess that was kind of my subconscious way of connecting to my dad, even though I didn't see him.
Hmm.
And I would play the game, and I'd get to a certain point, and then just kind of be dumbfounded or stuck at a spot because that game's pretty damn
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
it can be pretty difficult. There are definitely some frustrating moments I can remember of going into the water shrine and just getting blitzed by ghosts and then being really angry about it. Uh, but I would get to a certain point in the game and then just kind of be content with it and do different like kid things and play, go outside and stuff. But I seriously, it took me about 4 to 5 years to finally beat that game, and so I was about 10 when I finally did beat it, and it just to me it's always a well that I can draw from to just kind of enjoy an JRPG. It's archaic as can be. Yeah, it's really clunky. Yeah, if you pick an enemy that gets killed and you're still going to attack that same enemy spot even if they're gone. I don't care.
Oh, I find it really interesting. A lot of times, whenever I ask people about this sort of thing, like, "Oh, where does your love for this come from?" It comes back to something like psychological, and I find it really interesting that, like, if you really sit down and think about it, like, they can have a lot more meanings. For example, whenever I was talking to Crow, in the very first uh, gaming favorites, when we were talking about, he really loves The Longest Journey. And I was asking him why he loves The Longest Journey. He was saying, oh, he was in a really bad time in his life, and he just happened to see it for a couple of bucks, and he picked it up, and then it like totally engrossed him at this time where where he was basically miserable in every other facet in his life, and now you're saying that it kind of JRPGs for you, for at least at the beginning, was kind of a connection to your father, because that's something you related with him. And I don't know, I just find that really interesting. My starting for JRPGs was probably, this was a lot less interesting anyways. I think, I mean, probably the first like more traditional RPG I played was probably Final Fantasy as well, like on a ROM, like probably like really after it was out, probably like 1998 or 9 or something. But I mean, I did play games that were kind of RPG-ish to begin with. I mean, the first game I played that had RPG elements that I can remember was definitely Zelda 2. I don't know if you've played Zelda 2 before.
Yes, I have, and I actually like that game. So I don't know if you enjoy that game.
No,
Still,
I do.
it terrified me as a kid, though. Like, the first boss that you fight, I had nightmares about that thing.
Is that, who's the first one? I can't remember.
It's the horse-headed knight with the mace ball.
I can totally see that. The thing actually about that game that really bothered me was whenever you die and Ganon laughs at you. Yeah, he's just trolling, and I don't know, that really scared me when I was younger. But I mean, that game, it has like really basic RPG elements. You kill enemies, and it very clearly shows that you get experience because a little number will appear above their head, and then you gain abilities, and it's basically an RPG except you have some side-scrolling levels in between, basically. So it kind of like really eased me into the idea of RPGs, because it was, you start off and it's like, okay, it's kind of like these other games. It's kind of like Mario in this way. It's kind of like this other game in this way, and then it has this other element, which of course I didn't know was an RPG element at the time. So that's kind of was my first experience with an RPG-esque game. And I think it's really important that I did that, because if I would have went straight into something like Final Fantasy, I probably would have been completely turned off, because, I mean, you had your dad there to help you, but some people, I mean, it's a story I hear a lot about people who don't like RPGs, is they talk about the first time they encountered one. It's a completely different beast, and they have no idea what they're doing. They don't understand the concept of like training or something, because all they've played is Mario Brothers, and in Mario Brothers, when you die, you just start over and you just try again, and eventually you'll get it. But that doesn't work in RPGs, and there's a lot more puzzle solving and things like that. So I think I was really fortunate in that sense.
That's definitely good primer and a good point to bring up, is that if you have somebody who's never played an RPG and then kind of goes into it, even today, I mean, you have a bunch of different RPGs. If you just kind of just go into it, it can be a bit daunting, because it's so much going on. There's so many different things that you can do to manipulate and break the system and make it your pleasure thing, I guess, for a better word. But I know some people were just kind of, they almost expect the game to kind of just kind of give itself to them, and so you can just do whatever instead of you having to figure out the odds and ends of it.
Some of it, I mean, these days even, I shouldn't say these days, because my example is kind of old, but I started Tactics Advance, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, like a year ago, and they explain nothing to you in that game. They don't explain how like the different races can't be certain classes. They don't explain how like you have to hold a weapon to get a skill, and then you have to get it for a certain amount of time. They don't show you anything. At the very beginning, there's like a tutorial. It's like, this is how you attack people. And I'm like, okay, I know this. Thanks, whatever. But then all the finer points that actually help you move throughout the game, they don't explain at all. And I was fortunate enough, I asked my brother, I was like, how come I'm not gaining any skills? Like, where's my, I'm not gaining any magic attacks or anything. And he's like, oh, you have to do this and do this and do this. So even these days, or somewhat recently, I should say, because that game's probably like 8 years old now, if not older, they can be really daunting. And I can totally understand how it turns a lot of people off, especially since almost I shouldn't say almost every game, but a lot of RPGs they try to be different from other ones, so they introduce entirely new ways of doing things. And whereas, a shooter is a shooter, a platformer is a platformer, more so than an RPG is an RPG, I think.
That is a good point. That definitely the other genres, for the most part, all they have the same formula. There's just different nuances to it. Where with RPGs, they kind of will have different mechanics to it, and that just really throws it out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this: Tactics Advance. If it was just nothing but a game of snowball fights, it would have been the best game ever.
You don't like Tactics Advance?
I'm impartial to it. It's okay, but however, if it was nothing but snowball fights, that would have been amazing. That'd been so awesome.
Maybe it's just me, but I find myself, like, every time I turn on the game, I'm like, okay, what was I doing again? All right, this person, I want to do this person, I want to turn to this. Because you have a party of, like 10 people, and each person you're trying to get certain skills and then switch out all the weapons, and you want them to get counters, so you have to give them this. So, but I don't want to buy another one of these weapons, and I found it, I don't know, I spend a lot of time every time I turn it on just trying to remember, like, all the stuff that I was trying to do with each of them. But
oh yeah, it can definitely be very engrossing. It's just for me, the magic definitely was in that snowball fight.
I thought the beginning was so good. Like, I loved the story, and like the graphics at the beginning are like so charming and super detailed, and the story's really cool. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's partially kind of their idea of making the rules or the laws that really.
Right.
Really bugged a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I talked about this like 2 episodes ago, even though it's not posted. So I probably shouldn't talk too much about tactics, but I kind of got sidetracked. First RPG, right?
Right. Sorry.
So my first probably, I don't even know if you could call it traditional, but it's more traditional, was probably Super Mario RPG. So it's traditional in the sense that it's, you have turn-based battles, and, you see an enemy, and the battles aren't random for them. I mean, they can be random, I think. But,
You just run into the enemies you wish to fight.
right. So it's not random in that sense, but I don't know. That was probably my first throw into the RPG world. So it would have been 16-bit. And the thing about Super Mario RPG is that, again, like, it's familiar in a sense because it has Peach and it has Mario and Toads and mushrooms and all that stuff, and it's half of it is kind of platformery because in the overworld, quote unquote, you're doing things. You're running around and you're trying to find mushrooms and you're collecting coins, and it's familiar. And then every now and then they throw a battle at you, and also that game is really simple in the sense that I don't think you max out at like level 30, and the highest amount of damage you could do is like maybe in the couple hundreds, whereas you have some RPGs where you have you do 99999 damage, and it's just, if I would have played something like that, it really, really would have thrown me off. But this kind of introduced me to RPGs in a gentle and in a very familiar fashion. So again, I was fortunate in that sense.
I think it's also a really good one to start with because it is so familiar because of the Mario characters, and I think it's really charming. I think Yoko Shimomura did a really good job with the music. It's just a very wonderful game. I still go back to it from time to time because I like to do like a low-level run through it. So I don't know if you've ever tried to do that.
I haven't, because what I did was I first played it in elementary school. I went over to a friend's house to do a project. And of course what we did was we did the project as quickly and crappily as possible just so we could go and play the Super Nintendo. Because at that point, I don't think I'd played one yet. Or if I did, I didn't really remember. And so he had like Donkey Kong Country, and he had Super Mario RPG. So he kind of explained what was going on as well. But I don't know, there's something about that game I just find so ridiculously charming. Like the music, like you said, is fantastic. I don't know, I I find it so charming, and the graphics are I find charming, and they're really nice as well. I don't know if you like the graphics because I thought most people liked them, and then I was listening to TV and Less podcast, and everyone on there was like, "Oh, those graphics are so terrible. They're so ugly. I hate them."
I think they are nowadays. If you go back to it now, you can make the claim that they're pretty ugly compared to when you first see it. I think you could kind of be like, "Oh wow, that's really impressive for the time." But if you look at them now, you could definitely and some of the special effects. Some of the special effects do look very jaggedy, but it's a 16-bit game. I give it a pass, I guess. I'm not too like hardcore. Oh my god, the graphics score, because it's definitely not what. If I can tell what the hell's going on in the game, I'm cool. I don't need all the bells and whistles. If I can tell this is this and that is that, cool.
Yeah, same here. But I think more of what I like is the style, how everything is kind of not chunky. Everything's kind of like fat. Like even like the leaves on like the trees are like they're really fat, and all the characters they're kind of squished down. Like Mario's kind of, I mean, he's kind of fat. All the characters are kind of fat. That's basically everything in the world is kind of like chubby, like blown up a little bit, and kind of like plasticky looking. And maybe it's kind of like really really bad like claymation. I guess that's what you could 16-bit claymation. It's kind of what it reminds me of. And I don't know. I thought that was really charming, and I really like the story as well. And like you said, it's really easy. I think you can beat it in like what, like 15 hours maybe.
Your first time going through it would probably take about 18, 20 hours, I think, and then you can definitely chop it down from there. Like the low level run that I did for it, I beat it when I was at level 7.
So how would you beat the final boss at level 7?
What you need the lazy shell. Like the probably the hardest fight might be the fight with Johnny and some of the fights in Nimbus Land, but once you get the lazy shell and you just put it on Peach and you are set.
And I don't quite remember what the lazy shell is. How would that help you?
The lazy shell it's a secret. You have to get a seed and a certain fertilizer. You have to get fertilizer. And
Yeah, I
you go
remember.
back to Rose Town and you put it together and it makes a vine stalk up to this cloud that allows you to get the lazy shell as well as the lazy shell armor. And the lazy shell armor is what you need because that pretty much makes you impervious to like everything. They'll be doing like a handful of damage to you, and that's it.
Right.
And so you just kind of truck it from there. If you can recall from your memory, there's a time where Mario falls through a bunch of Nimbus clouds, and one of them has 2 treasure chests.
Yeah.
That's where those are, and that's how you get
I remember getting the lazy shell, but I don't remember it being awesome.
Well, the weapon is kind of meh, but the armor is amazing.
Ah, okay. Right. I don't remember the armor, so maybe that's why I'm confused. The lazy shell, I think, it's just like the shell from the Fat Koopa, right?
Right. Yeah, it's a really, really big shell, and that's a pretty decent one. But the lazy shell armor is so helpful. It makes it easier. And then you need Yoshi's Cookie, and constantly you lose at Yoshi's Cookie event where the experience, so you don't get the experience.
Right.
It's a bit of a hassle, but level 7. Yeah.
I think what I'm going to be doing next time, because like I said, I only first played it like back when I was in elementary school, and then I didn't play it again until a couple summers ago, because my fiance owned it, and I was like, "You have Mario RPG? Well, I know what I'm playing this summer." So I played that. So I've only played through it maybe. I played it on an emulator once or twice back in the day, so I probably went through it like maybe 3 times. But I think next time what I would do is I'm just gonna go with like the worst characters. I don't know who those are. I'd have to look them up. It's probably Peach is probably one of them, right? Because she has pretty low attack.
Yeah, I always used her because of her healing abilities, but I think she is one of the... I don't know if she's considered one of the lesser ones. Maybe Mallow. I don't know.
I think Mallow and Peach and Mario would be a pretty bad team, so... Because
Yeah,
Mallow's a healer
I
too,
can't
right?
really think of who would be like the worst characters because they're all pretty decent. They're not.
Yeah, I mean you only have like six, so 5 or 6. This is Mario, Peach, Bowser, Geno,
And
Matt,
Mallow.
and Mallow. So yeah, five characters. So I guess they all have to be pretty decent.
Mm.
And that was something else that I loved, and was like the coolest thing ever back in the '90s was Bowser joining your team. Eh? I was like, my mind was just.
Bowser's pretty boss.
That was like, I think that was the point where he stopped being like the bad guy and started becoming like an anti-hero kind of.
Kind of like Day.
Yeah, kind of.
Kirby.
Yeah, because I mean, previously Bowser is at the end of every game and he's trying to kill you. But at that point, and then farther on through a lot of other games as well, like Mario Party and stuff like that, he's just kind of there to mess things up. And he's like, oh, capture the princess, you save her, good times, good times. So I don't know. I prefer Bowser's. I like anti-heroes a lot more, I think, than bad guys because a lot of the times they can join your party and they can be nice at times, and it's more fun, I think.
Mm. Let's see there. Did you play many other RPGs during the 16-bit era, or?
I did not play that many, but I did play some. I've probably rented a couple here and there. I remember I rented Final Fantasy 3, I think.
Okay.
North American 3. And I was bored out of my mind, and I never rented it again. And I also would rent Chrono Trigger all the time. And eventually, the place where we used to rent it from was a gas station where if you paid for $20 in gas, which back then was a lot more gas than, these days.
Right.
But now $20 of gas is like 18 liters or something. But back then, $20 of gas was like at least 30. And then you would get a card for a free movie rental. And we were like, well, can we use these on the games? Because the game and movie rentals are close to the same price. And they're like, yeah, whatever. So every time we go, we pay for exactly $20 in gas, get our card, and then go rent a game. And it was usually a Super Nintendo or a Sega Genesis game. And a lot of times it was Chrono Trigger. But one day, they decided to sell off all their games. So I was like, Dad, we have to go now. So we drove there and we ended up buying like all the Donkey Kong countries and Chrono Trigger and stuff. And they were all like $8 each. So
Nice.
that was a good steal. But Chrono Trigger was probably probably like my second or third RPG that I actually got into, and I'm one of the people who think it's one of the best. It's definitely one of the best 16-bit, and for me, it's like one of my favorite RPGs. I find it really hard to differentiate between my favorite because I've played so few, but it's really up there for me.
That's a really good one to go with, though. I mean, the concept of time travel, it's done really easily. You're going to a whole bunch of different settings, which is really nice, except for the prehistoric one, which is absolute garbage. And the future one is a bit depressing, but
The future one is so depressing.
so depressing. But I think what really helps kind of help that game a lot is that it also allowed you to go to a time, because in a lot of RPGs they have that the ancients were so much cooler than we are now, and somewhere along the way we lost it. And in Chrono Trigger they show that, you experience that, and at the time that was really like, oh man, yeah, that's pretty cool. Freaking I can't think of his name off the top of my head. It's
Magnus?
right there. What's his name?
Magnus?
No. Oh, the composer. What's his name? Oh, Yasunori Mitsuda. That's right. Mitsuda does a fantastic job because he worked on most of the music for the game, and Uematsu threw in most of the prehistoric music for that game. And, yeah, Mitsuda did a fantastic job with the soundtrack. I love it, and the final boss theme. Well,
One of the final boss themes.
before the final fight, there's the World Revolution. I don't know if you know it by name.
No, I don't.
Where it's like dun 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 dun.
Yeah, it's pretty fast paced, right?
It's I believe the second round.
That's when you're like in space, right? Kind of like in a different zone.
It's still you're fighting the core. It's after the first initial.
Oh, okay.
Shit, the core is totally, really kicking my ass here, kind of thing.
Right.
And then you have the second part, and then there's the third part, if I remember correctly, where there's the 3 different things, and you have to attack one specific
thing.
Right.
Not to say too much. I don't know that I think the thing with Chrono Trigger is that pretty much every facet of it is like top notch. Like if you take, for me, like graphics, they're fairly nice. The art style is pretty good. The music, like you said, the soundtrack is fantastic. There's almost no weak links in the entire thing, and I really liked what they did with a lot of instruments in there and try to synthesize like choir voices and things like that, which is something I mentioned in a previous episode. And like usually one of the things people talk about RPGs being so awesome with is like the characters and how they get attached to them, and the stories are so great. And for this RPG, I would definitely say that it is those things. Like I love all the characters. Like Frog's an awesome character. Robo's awesome. Chrono's awesome. Magnus is awesome. And the 2 girls are kind of less awesome. I do like Luca a lot, but
Marl's
Marl's okay.
A bit of a stock character in a way. She's very generic, I guess.
A little bit, but I do like all of them, and the story's good. And the great thing about it is there's so many connections, I guess, that and really cool things that you can do to find out about those connections that like you could still not even know about. I mean, every now and then I still hear something about Chrono Trigger that I didn't know, because there's there's more than 10 different endings. Some of them are fairly similar, but some of them are drastically different. Mm-hmm. And because you're traveling through time, like you can go back and one of the things that I always thought was really cool was you go back in time, and Luca's mother is in the present time, I guess I should say. She's in a wheelchair, and you go back in time and you can witness the time where, because of Luca, she ended up basically like smashing her legs up in one of like her father's machines or something like that. And you can go back and you can try to stop that, or most of the time I don't think I've ever stopped it, because you have to do very specific things, and there's tons and tons of things in the game like that, and none of them really affect the story or the game that much, but they're so well done that you still really want to do them. I think like in most games, if you go back in time and you plant this seed, and then you come back and it'll be a tree, and then you can use that tree to make this awesome shield or something. But in a lot of these cases, you don't really get anything from a lot of. It's just cool to know, and because the characters are so neat and they're so intertwined, and I cared about them, I actually wanted to try to find out all these neat little things going on. And I don't know if you found that.
To bring up is that for RPGs, having that, it's the small things that are done so well, and doing those small things really helps kind of build a sort of connection to the characters themselves. And it's also, I think, a good thing that it's done in Mario RPG, because there's some little goofy things that are going on from time to time, but like in Rose Town, you have the guys being hit with arrows because their heads look like bullseye marks and stuff. And it's just those little nuances that really helps build the game into an amazing piece, specifically with Chrono Trigger, where just, as you said, everything's intertwined. There's always some sort of thing that seems to connect to one another in some regard. And it's nice how many different layers and how much of it's overlaying one another. That really makes it stand out.
And I thought like the writing was really well done in that, and in the sense that it was still really serious, and there was obviously a huge gravity to the situation because you still had things like people dying or being sick and people you can't save and things like that. But it would also occasionally have like some really charming and really hilarious things. Like I remember like when Frog was. If another thing about this too is it depends who you have in your character because or in your roster at the time because that's the characters that interact with the world. And if you have Frog in your roster whenever you're in prison at one point, and he's like, "Oh, guards, oh my belly button aches," and the guards are like, "What's wrong?" And he comes and he's like, "Ha ha, frogs don't have belly buttons," and then he kills the guard. And there's lots of little moments like that too, and. I don't know what it is. There's something about Chrono Trigger to me that's always going to make me go back to it. And I think part of it too is also that it took out some things that I don't like about RPGs, or not that I don't like, but I would not prefer. And part of that is the random battle. I mean,
I think most people don't like random battles.
yeah, like Chrono Trigger. If you're low on health, just avoid monsters. And it's not like they make it a cakewalk. A lot of monsters are like flying back and forth or will chase you and things like that. But you can choose and pick your fights if you want to. So that was part of the reason why I love that as well. And another thing I love about it is that it's relatively short. Because that's something else I can't stand about RPGs is like, especially some series, it's like, oh, well, to finish the main story, without all that side quest fun stuff, it's, like 100 hours. I'm like, 100? I don't think I've ever put 100 hours into a game. And I guess that's not true, but I've never put 100 hours into a game, like, as a single story. I might have put, for example, I know I've put hundreds of hours into Smash Brothers or hundreds of hours into Sonic Adventure or something, but that's because I replayed the game and I loved it and I would do the certain parts that I love over and over again. It's not, it doesn't take you like 100 hours to beat like Mario Brothers 1 or, something. I don't know, how do you feel about the lengths?
I personally don't mind, and I kind of tend to enjoy the ones that are really long or can be a bit longer. Case in point would be Xenogears. I absolutely love that game to pieces, even with its second disc of having to be low on funds. Thank you, SquareSoft, for pushing money to Final Fantasy VIII. But it's about a 60 to 70 hour game, and I absolutely love it to pieces. A lot of the Trails in the Skies games, doing everything in them, and because I play all of those games in Japanese, it takes me a little bit longer just because I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm reading this right. I'm reading this right. Okay, I'm not stupid. And then go through and figure it out from there. And usually that'll take me a little bit longer, but I think partially, like I say probably about 50 to 60 hours as well for those games, but I think part of it has to do with me leaving a game on and doing something like I need to make something to eat, while that's kind of playing in the background, and I need to go somewhere real quick, I gotta go to the post office to grab something. So I'll just pause it real quick and just
you're one of
hop over to the
those
post
people.
office and then come back. So
yeah, you're one of those
I personally I don't mind it, but I can see where having something that's extremely long be really, really not your cup of tea.
But why? But you said you like it being long. What
What
do you get out of it being long? Like, do you enjoy, for example, if you had two RPGs that were essentially identical, except for one was 100 hours and one was 20 hours, which one would you like to play?
That in that regard, it would have to be. It comes down to more of if the story or the characters really or the music get to me more so than the length of the game. Two good examples would be The Last Story and Xenoblade for the Wii. And Xenoblade can be another one that's 60 to 70 hours plus. Especially if you try to do everything, it's going to take you a long time. Whereas Last Story is about a 20 to 25 hour game. However, I really like both of them for entirely different reasons. The length doesn't bother me in either one at all. I tend not to go back to too horribly many games after I beat them.
Mm-hmm.
It's especially now. Like when I was younger, I did because I didn't have that many. I grew up kind of poor,
Yeah,
but
no, I hear you there.
so nowadays it's not as much of an issue, and so and plus I just have other things to do. I don't have time to really go back to some of the older ones, but like if you gave me two that were, one was 20, one was 100, it would really have to boil down to the story, how the characters are, and the music.
Hmm. One of the things that I've heard as an argument before for the length is that it gives you like more time, or it's necessary to get you to connect to the characters more and whatnot. And I would respond to that by saying that that's just then they're doing a really bad job to get you to connect to those characters. I mean,
I don't think it's that they're doing a bad job. I think it's that they're just taking too long, possibly. You don't need, the first 15 to 20 hours to connect with a character and finally feel like you're, oh, well, yeah, and then go into it. You can do that within the first 3 hours of a game.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and I've done that in like 5 or 6 hour games. I've connected with the characters, or even shorter games. I've played some games that are like an hour long. I've connected with the characters, but I feel like if it's a choice, then that's fine. But I have a feeling that there'll be a lot of RPGs that they just try to get you to connect to the character through familiarity, not so much as through other methods like empathy or things like that.
Right. In that regard, yeah, that would be poor storytelling, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
If they're having you, like, sometimes, for example, Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest is a lengthy game. Like, any of them, well, not one, but Dragon Quest 7 is an incredibly lengthy game.
Mm-hmm.
And that boils down to how much there is to do, how many random encounters there are. It's just a very slow-paced game. And that's more so not a hindrance to me because the story is really, really awesome. It's more of just a hindrance on gameplay, which some people will be turned off of and just not bat an eye towards.
Hmm. Well, seeing as I'm talking about something I don't like, I'll talk about a couple more things I don't like, and then we'll get into more things we do like. But one of the things also that like turns me off of RPGs, I mean, I've kind of alluded to it before, but I don't play that many. And part of the reason is because of the length of time, that I would prefer to play 5 10-hour games than one 50-hour game. And part of it too is the it's just like the basic mechanic of being in a fight. I find that they make you basically some RPGs, I should say. I'm not going to bash all RPGs here. Some of them, like, they just make you grind and grind and grind and grind. And in some RPGs, it's okay because the battles are fun. But even something that's fun after doing it for 50% of the game, if it's a 100-hour game, that's 50 hours. If you typing I'm going to use this spell, do this. Use this spell, do this. And for me, like, I don't know why they do that. I don't know if it's to artificially lengthen the game. I don't know if it's because they think, like, because a lot of people find that enjoyable. But for me, like, even, like, simple or kiddie RPGs, like Pokemon, the first couple Pokemons, I mean, usually, let's say they take you 50 hours to beat, that last 10 hours before the Elite Four is going to be grinding. And I don't understand why they do that. I mean, you've definitely played a lot more RPGs than me, so you maybe have a different perspective on it, but I don't know, what do you think of the of that concept of just basically forcing you to grind?
I don't mind grinding to a degree. I think if there are plenty of monster groups for you to encounter, it helps it a bit. And I guess you can kind of see it as a way to be strategic in your fights. If you are not really, if you don't know exactly where the most amazing weapons or magic or what have you are, I think gives you plenty of opportunities to be able to pick and choose exactly how you want to go into a fight, and then once you do get into the boss fights that can be kind of difficult, you can actually put that plan to the test and hope it works.
It kind of like the thing is, if the battles are really difficult, like at the beginning of an RPG, you're using a lot of strategy, and that can be difficult, and maybe stressful, but still enjoyable in the sense that you're like you said, strategizing. You're okay. I have to do this and this. And you just get out of it, by the skin of your teeth, and you're like, oh, thanks, I'm alive. But then if you get too good, then it's basically tap, 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 tap A, tap A, tap A, tap A. Okay, I'm done. Run around. Tap A, tap A, tap A. Okay, done. Run around. But there's still times where you still need to get stronger, like right before a boss or something. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's not a lot of balance. I don't know, just that mechanic to me just seems like, I don't know, to me it just seems like it's just an old mechanic that doesn't really serve a lot of purpose. I mean, a lot of the RPGs that I do like Chrono Trigger or like Mario RPG, you aren't doing that much grinding. You may do some, but like I said in Mario RPG, like you max out at like level 30, and in Chrono Trigger, I don't remember ever grinding for any extended period of time. So you can have an RPG without it, but then people call that RPG too simple. And I feel like there should be a different way to make it difficult than just basically throwing 30 more hours of pressing A at you. Because to me, there's no skill in that. It's just how much time can you commit to playing this game?
Well, I think the purpose that it does serve is more of a conventional one for your character is getting strong. It is the most simplistic way of saying your character is getting stronger, because if you're starting off with as typical with JRPGs, you usually have some sort of main character who has no background in fighting whatsoever. Not all the times, but a lot of times sometimes they'll give them the cliche, there's some sort of mystical thing about them, or they kind of spring from humble beginnings, and in that case they have so many fights to kind of get you into the mindset that, okay, well, this character finally should be able to slaughter all who stand opposed to him because he has murdered a whole species of slimes, kind of thing. But I can see where it's a bit outdated nowadays. So
sometimes, in some ways, for example, I'm going to keep bringing this back to Mario RPG, but at least they made it a bit more interactive, or even Legend of Dragoon, where they make you tap a button at a certain time. At least then you're doing something. Like, for example, in Mario RPG, it can make a difference, because if you're using the ability where you can jump infinite times as long as you press A at the exact right time, then it can make a lot of difference. Or in Legend of Dragoon, I don't know if you've played it, Taylor.
It's kind of rhythmic almost.
Yeah, it's like, okay, press triangle, 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 and then sometimes the enemy will try to defend itself, and then you'll have to press X to defend that, or your attack will fail and you'll lose your combo.
Right.
So in those instances, they do try to make it a little bit more interactive and a little bit more enjoyable. And to me, there's a skill to playing Legend of Dragoon. I mean, there definitely is. There are some people's attacks, because for those who haven't played, each person's separate attacks has a different rhythm to it. So if I use, spinning cane, it's a lot different than I don't remember, some Bone Crush. Even if they do come from the same character. So to me, that has a bit of skill in it, because some of the rhythms I could never get. There were some moves I just avoided because I could never do the rhythm, but there were some moves that, like my fiance, she could do all of them. So I don't know. To me, that was a way to make battles more interesting, at least. So I think I can deal with a lot of battles, but only if it's not going to be the same thing over and over.
No, that's understandable. That's why I brought up the point about the monster groups, because there are certain RPGs that I can't stand, and it's because when you're going through a dungeon, you have maybe the same two monster groups that you're fighting over and over and over and over. It gets really frustrating when it is just the same like handful of monster groups. As long as you give me different monsters, or at least a different combination of monsters to fight throughout the dungeon,
Mhm.
I'm content. I'm a very easy man to please when it comes to that.
Something you mentioned, because you mentioned something about species, and I always thought it'd be a really cool idea if you had a RPG that um, had certain species, but only as it was more realistic and more dynamic in the sense that a really basic idea. So let's say you're playing Dragon Warrior, all right, and the world starts off with 100 slimes, and then maybe it starts off with six of another. What's another animal? A Draki. So there's 6 Draki and 100 slimes. So if you go around and you're randomly battling, and you kill all 100 slimes right off the bat, then there's no more slimes, and you've basically painted yourself into a corner. But if you, for example, only kill them slowly, then they'll have enough time to reproduce. Or if you only kill a couple, then and each population, for example, maybe slimes will the population will continuously grow. So you have to kind of beat them back. Or metal slimes will never get past 5 or 6 because they're slow breeding or something like that. And I thought that would always be like really interesting. I mean, there'd obviously have to be a way for you to watch this, so you wouldn't paint yourself into a corner by killing all of the easiest monsters. But I always thought that would be a really interesting idea to try to do something like that, where the species or the animals, there's a bit of, I guess, management in who you were fighting as well.
Yeah, that would be. I guess the not the
Obviously,
same
there'd
way
be a lot of
as
kinks
that.
to work
Yeah,
out.
that would be really difficult to kind of pull off because that's a lot of.
I mean, you'd have to do with like a short RPG or something, like maybe like I wouldn't see it being able to be more than like 10 hours long or something. But I think it would be really interesting to do that, and then maybe they'd have to give you some specific reason to fight certain ones, like maybe if you attack Drakis all the time, then your speed will go up more than if you attack slimes, then your attack will go up more, or something like that. So I don't know. I just thought it'd be an interesting idea to try to do something like that, but I find that I don't know. There's not a lot of innovation a lot of times. In like you said, there's a lot of cliches and stuff like that. But I know I'm coming off as cynical, but I'm trying to get the stuff I don't like out of the way.
No, yeah, you can definitely kind of point your finger at that and say, well, there's no innovation in that regard. I guess the one counter I would say is that even though there might not be innovation in that, a lot of the times they're having to make their own kind of world, their own kind of place, their own kind of architecture and stuff. And sure, some of it is borrowed from either others that they've seen, other games that they've seen, or possibly some sort of real life basis. But a lot of the times it can be pretty out there, and I think more so the imagination and the creativity goes to that as opposed to some of the things in gameplay.
Right. Because I guess maybe they feel like they got that part down, and that crafting the world is a bit more important.
Mm.
I don't know. I just think it'd be interesting if somebody made an RPG where I mean, well, okay, maybe this is a good example, because I know they spent... I haven't played it yet, so I can't comment on it, but I know they spent a year developing the battle system for The Last Story, and apparently it's interesting and stuff, but I think it'd be nice if a couple more games really focused on coming up with new battle systems and stuff like that, opposed to just coming up with an interesting story and an interesting world, which are important. But I don't know. Did you think the battle system in The Last Story was interesting?
I liked it. It wasn't. I didn't think it was.
Was it worth spending a year working on?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think. Uh, how do I want to put it? It's. I don't know. I liked it. I'm not. I guess this is something I'm a bit probably not good to say, but I'm not really, like, the battle system doesn't affect as much of my opinion on the game as does the story, the setting, the characters, and the music. Like, the battle system, I know that sounds really weird. The one part that I am interacting with, I have my input actually being reevaluated in the game. I'm the least caring about for. It sounds really dumb, but
no, it doesn't.
I don't like it. Last Story's battle system was fine. It didn't bother me any. Them taking a year on it, I couldn't tell you if that was too long or if that was too short. So they should have thought longer on it. I enjoyed what it was.
So I don't know if you have any other mechanics or criticisms or things specifically about RPGs you really love. Actually, I don't think I even asked you that. What is it that you love about RPGs?
One of the things I really, really latch onto when it comes to an RPG is music. I think that really, really helps bridge the gap, and it's something that always sticks in my head, and I always carry it around with me. It just, I really, 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 really like music. It helps, it strengthens a scene, or it could possibly weaken it if it doesn't do a good job. But usually when I do like it, of course, it helps strengthen the scene, it reinforces it, it makes it that much more action-packed or emotional or, sorrowful. And I really, music is a wonderful thing in RPGs, I think. I don't know if you really pay that much attention to music, or...
Yeah, well, we just did a whole episode on music, on video game music, so I do pay attention to it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess, like, I don't know if you would feel that same way about music, specifically with RPGs, I mean...
I definitely think they would, because most of the time the talk, despite the fact that it was about music, it ended up going to RPGs. Because I was talking to one of my friends in Crow, and they're like probably both their favorite genre is RPG as well. So I was just like, no, this is about music. Stop talking about Final Fantasy. Stop it. We'll do an episode on that later. Well, is there anything particularly about you think that RPG music you enjoy that more than other types of music? Say, like I don't know, like an action adventure or a platformer or something.
I enjoy it more, but I do enjoy some of the platforming music.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying you enjoy just one, but you're saying that music in RPGs is something you really love about RPGs, and I'm wondering if it's because you connect a bit more with that music than other music.
Probably. Like, I do like some platforming music, but most of the time it's just RPG music. It resonates with me.
What about it you think resonates?
What about it? I grew up listening to a lot of classical music, and seeing as I'm partially deaf in my right ear, a lot of music with lyrics throws me off because I don't hear it as well, and so I'll just kind of throw in my own words and completely botch lyrics. So having no lyrics really makes it easier for me to listen to. It also allows me to kind of be creative in my own mind, because listening to music, maybe not particularly RPG music, but maybe music like RPG music, that like amateurs or somebody like OC Remix or just Dojin music, I listen to that, and it allows me to be creative and when I'm writing, or kind of gets me into a mood to write and stuff. So,
a lot of it is really, a lot of it's really good background music, and I find a lot of it is, it's a lot more thoughtful in a sense. Like a certain game, if you're playing, for example, like I said, a shooter or a platformer or something, those those two genres, I find the music isn't trying to make you feel something as much, so much as it's just trying to entertain you. Obviously, there's different examples, and there's thousands of games, so this doesn't apply. I'm really painting with a wide brush here, but I think RPGs it's a lot more part of the storytelling, and it's trying to wrap you up in the story in a certain way, or it's trying to make you okay. So this town is you should be depressed when you're here, for if nothing else, then because of the music.
And I think it also helps because, because for example, we've both played Chrono Trigger, and probably somebody who's listening, there's bound to be a few people that have played Chrono Trigger, and you could easily just say the word zeal.
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking of.
Right, exactly, and just the music from that will just kind of start to come into your head. Or if you've played, you said Super Mario RPG, you could just easily say the battle theme for it. I don't know if that comes to mind to you, but it comes to mind when I think of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think
so. It just
I think part of it about RPGs too is because if you are spending, for example, 20 hours grinding, you're going to be hearing the same song for 20 hours. So it had better be a good song. And even if it isn't...
Well, nowadays, they kind of... for example, with a lot of Tales games, they break the battle themes up at different points. So you'll listen to the same battle theme for a while, but then after a certain event, it'll change.
Right.
They also, with the Trails in the Sky, or the games for those, you'll get to a certain point where you'll have different random fights that'll have different songs to them, particularly with the newest game that they came out with from last year. So
yeah, but I mean, a lot of the older RPGs, like 8-bit, 16-bit, you're going to be hearing, unless it's like a boss battle or a mini boss, it's going to be the same theme all the time. Whenever you're playing Pokemon, it's the same battle theme for like the 70 hours you're playing, unless you're playing a boss. Or, I don't remember, but probably the Final Fantasy it is. Dragon Warrior definitely is.
Final Fantasy had the same theme. It didn't change even for bosses.
Oh, didn't it?
Nope. Not that I don't even think it changed when you fought the final boss.
Wow.
It did in later reincarnations of it, but I don't particularly remember it changing from the regular Nintendo version.
Right. I mean, I played the first one. I didn't play that much of it, but maybe I played like a quarter of it or something, but that was like years and years ago. I remember almost nothing about that game except I remember more like the background and the characters, because the reason I wanted to play is because I don't know if you've ever seen the 8-bit theater, I guess comedy
the
video.
webcomic. I've
not the webcomic, but they took the webcomic and they did like flash videos on Newgrounds or something a long time ago.
Okay.
And they're probably not funny now, but whenever I was a kid, I thought they were really funny. And so I got like kind of attracted to the characters, like the fighter and the mage. They all had like characters for me now. So then I wanted to play the game. Yeah, the sword chucks and what was the one thing the fighter did? It's like double monkey fist something attack.
Absurd.
Yeah. So I guess I wanted to play the game because I got connected to the characters outside of the game. But that was a long time ago, so I don't quite remember that one.
I'd say for that game, the music more so is that really sticks. Like I remember all the music for it. Probably the ones that stick out the most are the overworld theme, the different vehicle like the ship, as well as the flying airship themes. The Sky Castle theme is really it's kind of surreal compared to the rest of the soundtrack for the game. And the Gulag volcano theme is really, really, really good too.
Okay, maybe I didn't get that far in that game because I don't know any of those places.
The ship you get really early on. You should have gotten the ship at least.
Yeah, it was a really long time ago. But one of the other games I remember playing, because I played that on an emulator, was the translated version of Mother, so which is the first Earthbound that was on the NES, but it wasn't released over here. And I remember playing some of that, and I thought I really enjoyed that. I don't know why.
I honestly can't get into the Mother series for whatever reason. I think it might be because it's got too much stuff coming from real world. But I can't really. That doesn't really sound too right. For whatever reason, Mother does not sit well with me.
I kind of liked that it had, because to me it was a bit refreshing, because like you said, a lot of RPGs are either Tolkien-esque or they're extremely like anime influenced, and this was, okay, you're a kid with a bat, but you're going to beat up crows and hobos, and eventually you'll get psychic powers, but other than that, pretty normal stuff. I don't know. I thought it was a little bit charming, and maybe the real world, or more real world, I guess, aspect made it more interesting to me, because the setting is just like, it's now. I mean, stuff happens that definitely wouldn't happen nowadays, but the setting is the real world instead of 20,000 BC in space, or minus 7,000 BC in some medieval wizard land. So
yeah, I don't know. There was a couple things that it did really well. I thought I liked the roulette health concept. I liked that, because if you took too much damage, you still had an opportunity to heal yourself before dying, kind of thing. And when you ran into enemies that were way too weak for you, you just instantly destroyed them.
no, I don't remember that, but those are good ideas. Those are good mechanics, I think.
Yeah, like I may not like the game, but I definitely like those couple things, or at least the series. I'm not the biggest fan of those few things. I really thought were really good ideas. For whatever reason, it just did not. It's too quirky for my taste. It has too much of its own vibe that it just doesn't.
Just doesn't do it for you.
Yeah, it feels like I can't get into it for whatever reason. It's
That's
got
fine.
its own thing, and I'm not included in that group of cool people.
That's fine. I mean, a lot of times people feel, especially on YouTube and stuff, they feel the need to like super defend their opinions. But I mean, even if you hated Earthbound, I mean, I wouldn't care.
Right.
Like, I mean, despite the fact that it's revered by a lot of people. Well, it's a cult. It's a cult following. So people get really defensive. Man, I mean, you can hate every game I love, and I wouldn't care. As long as you didn't remind me about it all the time. But I mean, you have good reasons, anyways.
Particularly with RPGs, is that it feels like if you say that they become very personal, and for some people, and if you don't like the same game that they like, it becomes this us versus them mentality. Or if you don't like something, but they really like it, you're in the wrong or they're in the wrong for whatever reason. And I've never understood that. If you don't like the game, you don't like it. Just if you don't like it, please tell me what you don't like about it. If you can. I mean, there's certain aspects of games that just intrinsically, for whatever reason, you just don't like. And Earthbound is kind of like that for me. There are a few other games that are like that for me.
Yeah, it's interesting
to just sit there
know.
And be like, oh, well, that sucked, and you suck too for liking it.
Oh.
That's just not.
Yeah, I'm not 8 years old anymore. I don't need to hear that. I think people do get really defensive, in particular about RPGs, and I honestly, I think that a lot of the reason for that is because they have invested so much time in it. For example, if you were a kid and you had 4 games or something for 5 years growing up or whatever on the NES, and one of them was Final Fantasy, a lot of times you replay games, you could have literally put hundreds of hours of your time when you are nothing but a sponge. You were supposed to be absorbing the world and learning, but you were sitting there playing Final Fantasy for hundreds of hours. That makes up a significant portion of your childhood, and you're going to have a lot of really fond memories for that. Whereas, some other games you might have only played for a couple hours here and there. I feel like people get a lot more attached to RPGs, whether they're good or not, because no matter how bad an RPG is, you will find a small group of people who insist it is the greatest game ever. And I had an example for this, but I forget what it is. And I think a part of the reason is because they've invested so much time into that. I mean, they've heard the same battle theme hundreds and hundreds of times. They've, fought the same enemy hundreds and hundreds of times, and there's just a real sense of, I guess, familiarity there that makes them really attached to it.
Yeah, and I don't think people appreciate it when you tell them that they've wasted that time playing a game that
I didn't say wasted.
In your eyes, or well, in somebody's eyes, garbage. I don't think they'd really appreciate that.
Well, maybe that's how they're taking it. I'm not saying it's wasted. If they enjoy it, that's fine by me. If they enjoy staring at a wall for hundreds of hours, they can do that.
More power to them.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't bother me, but yeah, maybe they do feel like it. I'm telling them they wasted that time, or I don't know. I just find that people get really defensive. And one of the reasons that a lot of RPGs don't do it for me is I feel like a lot of times those kinds of people, they really like hype it up to be like the greatest thing ever. Like one example is my fiance really loves Legend of Dragoon. She played it several times whenever she was a kid, and she was insisting that like this game is amazing. It's one of the best RPGs ever. She loves it, and then when I play it, I'm going to love it. And she's telling me all about how darts is cool because of this, and Meryl is cool because of this, and everyone's so awesome, and they do this really cool thing, and I'm like, okay, so I played through it, and it was okay. I mean, it was good, but it was just built up in my mind to be like this amazing experience, and I feel like part of me, because it wasn't that I maybe didn't even like the game as much as I would have originally. And for me, that happens a lot with RPGs. When people say it's like the greatest thing ever and I play it, I'm like, well, it was enjoyable, but I'm sorry, my life isn't changed.
No, yeah, that's understandable. I mean, it's really interesting that because you could just say the same for movies and books and stuff. It's one of those that where you could actually have people's opinions of a game be really affected by how other people present it to you. If they're trying to sell it as the holy grail of stories or something, and you play through it and you're just kind of like, oh well, it was all right, kind of thing.
Oh, totally.
I think you've almost kind of built it up to fail right from the get-go if you say that. If you just say, oh, it's a good game, I really enjoyed it, leave it at that, then let the person that's hasn't played it kind of experience it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of being kind of set with flares or markers to kind of concentrate on.
Yeah. And that was part of it too.
If you're zoned in, and if you're concentrating on this one thing, it kind of becomes like a red herring in a way, because then it takes away from all the other quote-unquote beauty in the game, because you're focusing in on this thing that friends or family or what have you have kind of said, this is a really, really cool part of the game, or this character is so amazing. Or
a lot of it is a lot of times when people talk about RPGs and why they're awesome, they talk about how the characters are really cool or the characters are awesome. Well, I bet whenever they first started playing as Cloud from Final Fantasy VII or as Darts from Legend of Dragoon, they probably didn't think they were the coolest character ever when they first started playing as them. But whenever I started playing as them, I originally was thinking, is this person cool? Why are they cool? This person is as cool as I thought. And, they didn't, I kind of didn't have time to grow, for them to grow on me. My first impression was already given to me.
Right. So the water's already muddied before you've even stepped in.
Mm-hmm. And in some other games that won't really matter because characters don't really matter that much. I mean, I'm going to keep bringing this back to Mario Brothers 1 because everyone's played it. So, I mean, people aren't going to say, oh man, Mario is the coolest guy ever. And then I'm not going to play Mario Brothers 1 for the first time and be, man, Mario isn't that cool. This just ruined the experience for me. Or, man, that guy that you play in Modern Warfare 2, he's the coolest guy ever. Okay, first off, I don't even remember the guy I played in Modern Warfare 2. I don't even remember if he has a name. But he's just a vessel for you. But I mean, in RPGs, some RPGs, there's no room for inserting yourself into that character. That character is set. He or she is written. This is this guy with this name. He had this kind of past. this is not you, this is this character, and you're just playing as them. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's part of it too. But enough stuff that we don't like, or I don't like, about RPGs. You said that your first real experience was Final Fantasy. Like, what kind of were your maybe other earlier experiences or things that really attached to you? Like, I know just from looking at your channel that you're obviously a Dragon Warrior fan. Um, and
I really enjoyed the first because I only played the first three. I only played 1 and 3 a lot as a kid, and I loved both 1 and 3. 1 was fantastic because, I don't know if you know this, but you can name your character up to 8 characters long, I think, possibly, maybe. But on the menu, only 4 letters show up.
yeah,
So
yeah.
when you bring up the letter, and so I when I was a kid, I'd just use my name. I'd be like, okay, Taylor, and so
You'd be Tail.
what you'd get on the menu is Tail, kind of thing, or Tail, I guess. But the 4 letters, the first 4 letters, there is a mathematical equation. So each letter represents a different point value, and say, for example, all the letters add up to a point value of 11. You would add up those 2 numbers, 1 and 1, to make 2. And there is in the selection of numbers from 0 to 9, well, not 0 to 9, but 1 to 9, there were different growth stats.
Right.
For your characters, and for whatever reason, mine came out to either be the second best or the best growth stats. So it made the game so easy, and I actually could beat it in a day.
And is it the same formula for all of them, or probably not?
I think it's just for the first one.
Man, and I just played that last summer. Only if I would have met you earlier, that game would have been much easier.
Yeah, because my friend, he had never really played it, and I had suggested to, because he had played a lot of the older Dragon Quest games. It's like, it is archaic, it is very old, but because we had a challenge for each other, and we of course never did it because it would just be insane. But before 9 was released, when there was only 1 to 8, we had this thing called the DQ challenge, the Dragon Quest challenge, and it was to play and beat within a semester 1 through 8.
Do you have 1,000 hours?
Yeah, exactly. It was
more
never
than that.
Gonna happen, but
yeah, that's insane. Because I mean, most of at least the newer games, those clock over 100 hours, right?
Right. 7 and 8 definitely take lots and lots of time.
Yeah.
uh,
so other than the fact of it being easy or easier to you, what was it about? I mean, what was it about that series that really attracted you?
I really like the music. I was also really young, but I enjoyed reading the Tolkien books. And so when I was still really young, and it was new to me, even though it might not have been new in general, it was at least new to me. I really liked it, and I would play the game, and then I would go outside and kind of have my own little Dragon Quest adventures in woods nearby or something. And that's kind of what did it for me. 3 has a world map similar to Earth's, and the settings are different kind of world settings. And so that I love kind of like world history, ancient world history and stuff. So it kind of, I think, was the beginnings of me getting into learning more about things like the pyramids and stuff like that. Being really interested in that. And so 1 and 3, I love to pieces. And I think as I've gotten older and I finally got to play Dragon Quest 5 has one of the more amazing stories in RPGs to me. It's one of those classic epics, kind of like the Odyssey or the Iliad.
Really?
To me, that's what it feels like. I love those stories. So.
Was 5 the one that never made it over to North America until like last year or the year before?
For which one?
Number 5?
Was 5 came out? It came out a few years ago. I want to say 5, well, maybe not 5, but at least 4 years ago.
Because there was that one Dragon Warrior or Dragon Quest that didn't make it over here, and then they released it on DS.
It
Which
might have
one's
been,
that?
well, 5 and 6. 5, both of those didn't until the DS, and
Oh, okay.
5 was 4 or 5 years ago it came out. And
Oh, okay.
then 6 came out probably much later.
Oh, okay. So me, I've only played. I played the first one and some of 7. Oh, okay, I played some of the first one. So I started playing it last summer, and again, my fiance was like, "Oh, Dragon Warrior is so awesome," and I'm playing it. And I'm like, "This is like the most basic RPG you could ever make. Like, you only have one party. It's not even a party. It's one character. You're just out there like." Freaking Leroy Jenkins in like all of the world, which has like 2 towns, and one of them's empty, and it's
Hey, there's like 4.
there's like
Well,
3.
No, there's not.
No,
I think there's, I think
there's the
4
original
towns.
town,
3 or,
and
3
then
or
there's
4. One of them
there's
is empty.
there's the empty one, and then there's the evil castle. That's like, I think that's it, isn't there?
There's a few caves. There's the castle.
Right, but basically, it's like you could not make a more basic RPG. You would have to try, and
It'd have to be a straight line. Oh,
at
Final
at
Fantasy 13.
yeah, I was waiting for that. And
I like 13 though, but besides the point, right? Yeah, Dragon Quest is a very basic game.
at first I was kind of like bored a little bit. Well, actually, first at the beginning, I was like really at the beginning of Dragon Warrior is really hard because I was like basically like almost out of money. I couldn't even get enough money to heal myself, so I was going out, and I think the first slime even killed me. It's really hard at the beginning, and like I don't know, is there something about it that started attracting me though? Maybe the fact that it was so simple, it was kind of like cathartic, just like it doesn't get much like simpler than this, and it kind of I don't know, there was something about it that attracted me because me, I mean, I've played RPGs on like the Wii and on the NES and on the basically every system that I own. I've probably played an RPG on it, and so I've experienced all sorts of things. And then only last summer I went back to Dragon Warrior. So to me, it was like it looked like the most basic thing ever, and I can totally understand why people would hate that, but for some reason, like that kind of attracted me to it, and I was like kind of in a trance whenever I played that game because it was just so simple that I don't know. There was something comforting about it. Maybe I was just feeling nostalgic for the old days of NES or something because I hadn't played NES in a while. But there was something about it that attracted me to it. But I should say that I only got to the final area. It's like a castle or something, right?
The Dragon Lord's castle.
Yeah, I got to the Dragon Lord's castle, and then I read online. It's like, oh, by the way, like double the levels you've gotten. I'm like, well, I'm done. Because I couldn't be bothered to grind for like 10 hours or something just to beat the game. I was like, well, I experienced most of it, and I mean, I like it, and
Yeah, when you get to the Dragon Lord's castle, there's a secret kind of area you can go to make it a little bit quicker. It's still brutal as hell.
yeah,
I remember as a kid, when I got to the Dragon Lord's castle, and it's like, yeah, we're just gonna run. Oh, I can't run. Oh, run. Okay, run. And then finally get to and it sucks too because when you get to where the Dragon Lord is, it is that final map area is such a pain in the butt because you have to go and loop through different things, and it's just like, can't he just be sitting on this throne and it's just a straight shot? No, it's got to be this long winding road to your suffering.
yeah. Well,
And
see, I'm glad I didn't put up with that. I was just like, well, I'm done. That's cool. Thanks, Dragon Warrior.
two is much worse. I can't stand two.
Two is worse?
2 is really evil. So if you thought 1 was to the point of, okay, I'm done, you will probably not want to play 2.
Didn't you just say that you like the first 3, and now you just said you hate 2?
I like 1. I like 3. I love 5. 4 is good. 6, it's okay. I didn't really find it that interesting. It was okay.
Okay, what's the
Uh,
subtitle for 5? It's
what's Hand of the Heavenly Bride or something? I think is the English.
I think that's like the one we don't own. So
That's if I yeah I would say if you do play any of them, 8 would be another one to recommend, but 5 for me would be.
because I do. I said this during the Final Fantasy episode as well. Is like I do. Despite the fact that I have not been head over heels about what I've played, because I did play 7, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I do like want to experience at least the best of the series, and maybe that'll lead me to want to experience the other ones. And I've heard a lot of people say that 8's the best, and so you would recommend 8 or 5?
8 or 5 personally. If you like shorter, 5 would be a lot shorter than 8.
I do
So,
like shorter, definitely.
so yeah, if you're wanting a shorter game, I would say 5. Personally, 5 is my favorite. So it's but you
I'll
can't
have
go
to get
wrong
that
either
one.
way. Just time restraint wise, 5 would be a easier go for you.
Okay. And I did, like I said, I did play 7. And again, fiance was talking about how it was the greatest game ever because she spent like 100 years playing this. Because she started playing it when she was like, I don't know, probably not even a teenager. And then she only beat it like a couple of years ago. So she spent a while playing it. And part of the reason was that, it's a long game. And part of it, too, is because she was having such a hard time because she never learned about the job system. So in Dragon Warrior, for those that don't know, in the later ones anyways, you have like class system, I guess I should call it, is you choose, oh, I'm going to be a warrior, then you gain warrior skills. And oh, I'm going to be, I don't know what other classes they have, mage or whatever, and I'll gain mage skills. But at the beginning, you don't have a class. Like your character is fisherman class, which has no skills. So her characters were not learning any skills for like the entire game. So she was having a really, really hard time with it. So she was telling me how this game was awesome. And I started trying to play it, and man, this game, it is so depressing. I don't know what it is about 7. I was talking to Happy Console Gamer about it. And I was like, oh, I just started playing 7. He's like, yeah, that game's kind of a downer, isn't it? I was like, yes, that is how I would explain this game.
It's a downer, but I really like the concept behind it. I think it's a wonderful concept.
I see. That's the thing. Like I was watching my fiance play, and I was like, "This is kind of cool." They're getting pieces of these puzzle map things, and then when you finish the puzzle, you go to another time, and then you help like free that time from whatever troubles it has. And it was kind of similar to Chrono Trigger in that way that you're traveling through time and through different areas of the world and stuff like that. And the story seemed really interesting, and the characters I found them a little bit empty, but the music was like I find the music's like for the most part like it's kind of like really melancholy, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it was really turning me off. And I was playing this game and the beginning is really, really slow for that game. It's ridiculously slow.
I believe it's about 2 hours before you get into your first fight.
Ugh, so slow. So I don't know. I was like playing it and I would fall asleep playing this game, not watching it. I'd be playing it and fall asleep, like in the middle of like a battle or something, or middle of walking to a town. So then she'd just like smack me and be like, "Stay up! Come on, this is the best game ever." I'm like, I can't. It's so depressing and so tiring. Just something about the music that just like it puts me straight to sleep. I don't know what it is, and I like so many concepts about it, but I can't get into it. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, it's one of those things that's just an intrinsic thing that for whatever reason you really like it or you really don't.
Some people say that's like one of the worst ones though. 7. So
I have fallen asleep playing Final Fantasy V. I hate that game with a fiery passion, and I fell asleep midday, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Just fell asleep on my floor in my dorm room playing it. And my roommate and one of mutual friends came back, and when I dozed off, and friend's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And I'm like, "Huh?" It's like, you fell asleep playing Final Fantasy V? I was like, "Yeah, It's like, good God, dude. I hate 5 so much. Oh. That's one I would not suggest if you haven't. Do not play
Okay.
5.
No, I was. Is that the one with the opera? Or is that
No, that is
6?
6.
Okay,
6 is
yeah.
the
I
opposite.
was recommended to play 6. Um, like, definitely. You should definitely play 6 first and then go on from there. So, I don't know when I'll have that opportunity, but someday. I mean, the part of the problem with RPGs too is like I've been playing Phantasy Star for like a year. I've been
Hell yeah.
I've been playing Pier Solar like since I got it. Um, just they take so damn long. Uh,
Especially some of the older ones, like Phantasy Star.
yeah, I mean
If
I haven't played it in a little while because it's been in storage for about a year because I had to move and I couldn't justify bringing my Master System for the one game I was playing on it,
Mhm.
especially since it's a fairly large system. So, but I I don't know. That was a game that for what I've played, I really, really enjoyed Phantasy Star. And I don't know what it is, but I, I don't know. Something about it was what I found was really charming, and maybe it's because most of what I played was on the NES and not the Master System because I didn't have one as a kid. But I thought that Phantasy Star maybe it was like the color palette or something, but the world seemed kind of like saturated,
Mhm.
and it seemed it was attractive in that way. And I really liked how it was different from what I played previously. Like it had all your characters on screen when you're walking, and I found the story again was simple, but it had some really impressive things about it, like the like the animations whenever you're fighting people,
Mhm.
like a lot of even like 16-bit and even games like the 64 or PlayStation, even some of them don't even have animation. I mean, how many Dragon Warrior games did it take until there was animation in a battle? Probably a few, right?
It took them a while.
Yeah, and
It took them a while.
this was like 1989 or something like that, where Phantasy Star came out. So I thought that was really impressive, and the animation of moving through the dungeons was so cool as well.
And also very, very confusing.
It was. Maybe it's because a lot of that stuff was new for me because I'd never really gotten into a dungeon crawler before.
Mhm.
And I was kind of enjoying like the process of making maps and everything, and because I was making those maps, I mean, I wrote a whole article on this, but because I spent time like making those maps, and you have to basically feel out every little section of this maze. That was basically it kind of forced me to grind as I went, but I didn't see it as grinding. I saw it as encountering enemies as I was kind of exploring this kind of maze. So
Mhm.
I had to do very little grinding in that game. I kind of just got into a lot of battles because I was exploring because I wanted to explore. So maybe I can understand how somebody else's experience would be different, but I really want to get back into that game. Hopefully over Christmas I'll be able to get my Master System back and I have no idea how far I am even or how many hours I played or anything because I've decided not to look anything up at all for this game. So um, it's I don't know how far I am, but I really want to get back into it. Like I really enjoyed it, like way more than I enjoyed like Final Fantasy or anything like that, or even Dragon Warrior. I don't know what it is. I don't know.
As I say, if you do really enjoy that, you should definitely give the others a go. Particularly 4, because 4 is from playing the other ones, it really helps reinforce it. But four is really awesome.
Those are ones you have to play pretty much in order, though, right?
Mm, I will say they take place at different times, so you could play them individually and not. Particularly with 3, 3 you could actually kind of just play on its own
Right.
for the most part. 4 pretty much wraps everything up into this nice little bow and sends it on its way, barring stuff that happens in one of the games.
Okay.
So it's 4 is a fantastic farewell to the fans on the Genesis.
That's cool. It's nice that that happens. But again, like there's so many RPGs I want to play. Like I want to play like Chrono Cross, and I want to play Paper Mario 2, and I want to play the other Fantasy Stars, and I want to get into Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, but all these things take time.
Right, and you haven't even mentioned, like, have you played, for example, some more of the kind of action-based RPGs at all, or JRPGs, or is that just not really your thing?
Such as an example.
For example, Secret of Mana.
I own Secret of Mana, and I watched my brother play a lot of Secret of Mana, and I played through some of it, but I really wanted to play at least two-player, and it's really difficult to get someone to play Secret of Mana with me. So I started playing through it with my brother whenever he was over at my place, and we were kind of trying to get through a large portion of the game while he was over, but stuff happened, and he had to end up going home, and we never got through it. But I do really I really like that game, and I like the concept of being able to play a three-player like action RPG, kind of like pre-Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles on the Super Nintendo.
Let's see, another one. Ys. Have you played any of the Ys games?
Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Ys. I look at it, and it looks so boring. Like the earlier ones, anyways. It looks so boring. I mean, like you just run into the enemies to attack them.
I'll be honest. I'm not too big of a fan of the bump mechanic. Some people really like it. I don't at all.
But that's just like I might as well play Gauntlet if that's what I wanted to do.
Exactly. I love Gauntlet, and but I don't like the bump mechanics for Ys. That really, that's not what sold me on the game. More so the music, and the newer games are a lot more to my taste. They're a lot more. I think the newer games are more. Think of Zelda, except for less about having to use a certain item on a boss, and more about murdering the hell out of everything in your path. It's more fast paced, and it's more.
I did play.
It's just quicker.
I did play Lagoon on the Super Nintendo, which a lot of people hate, but I actually really liked Lagoon. And I'm trying to think of other. I don't know. I haven't played that many action RPGs either. I mean, part of the reason too is that RPGs are generally fairly expensive. Like even when they come out, but then they either retain their value or go up in value. So there. I mean, if you go back to like try to buy any retro game, more often than not, some of the rarest or some of the most expensive games on the system are RPGs, whether they're rare or not.
Yeah, and part of that's just from, for lack of a better word, asshats that think that a game should cost $300 or more to buy.
Yeah.
I really frown upon that. I mean, if it was like some sort of super deluxe special, oh my god, this thing's going to give you, nuggets of gold every night kind of thing, I could understand. But when it's just the game and people want to charge somebody to buy like $200-$300 for it, personally, to me, you've taken away a bit of the magic in games doing that.
Yeah, for sure. Because then, I mean, even if it's, you kind of set yourself up to fail in that sense, because whenever you're playing, you're thinking, was this really worth $300?
Exactly. Back in the day, the games were pretty expensive to begin with.
But your parents bought them,
now,
so...
But it's just, it's crazy how expensive they are now with the eBay things and the buy it nows, or people on Craigslist charging absurd amounts of money for that. It doesn't happen in Japan, thankfully. There's the games that are expensive because they're rare. I can understand a game being expensive because it's rare, as opposed to people that are just trying to gouge people.
Yeah.
If it's a uncommon game, I understand. If it's a game that people want to play, like Chrono Trigger is really not that uncommon.
Same with Earthbound. Earthbound's not that uncommon.
Particularly now with the DS version out, and also the PS1 version. And mind you, those are a bit inferior, possibly, I guess, if you really think about it that way.
The DS version, the thing with the DS version is they retranslated it. So, I mean, technically, it's more accurate to the Japanese version, but some people who played the original version, like my brother, he said he doesn't like the new dialogue because it's not what he remembers. I don't know if it's better or worse or what.
I know in the Japanese version's really interesting with Chrono Trigger because there's some really cool aspects to it. One is that they mention the planet as a living thing, which is really cool, and that doesn't come across at all in the English translation, from what I remember.
No, I don't remember that either.
The
I mean, it's
other
been a while
thing
since I
is
played.
that I really love, and you can do it in English, but it just seems corny. Corny. And that is with Robo. And with Robo, he's a robot, but in the Japanese one, when you first meet Robo, in Japanese you have hiragana, which is your more kind of loopy based characters, and katakana, which is your kind of foreign words that invade into Japan, so they give them these blockier, jaggedier characters, which they may look similar, but they have the same sound, kind of thing.
Right.
And with Robo, he, for the most part, uses the katakana except for kanji at certain points. But as the game progresses, he starts using more and more hiragana, and it kind of gives a whole new nuance to the fact that he is kind of becoming more and more real and lifelike instead of just being a robot. And
that's really cool.
And there's things like that if you tried to do that in English, what it would be like Buzz, it'd be talking really robotic, but it just feels kind of silly.
Yeah, I don't know if he does. I don't know if they do try to translate that by doing things like Buzz, because I remember him buzzing a while, but I might have just assumed, I just might have just connected that with him being broken and then being more like, oh, my servos are now repaired or something. I don't know. Did you play any of the Lunar series?
I've played the first one.
And what did you think?
I liked it. I played it on the PS1 version, so I don't know. Like, I heard that the Sega Saturn, was it?
It's Sega CD.
Sega CD version was a lot better, but from the PS1 version that I played, I enjoyed it.
Now I'm gonna get a lot of people angry with this. I knew I said I was done hating things, but oh my god, I hate Lunar. It was so boring.
Train around.
It was so boring.
What is it about Luna that you like? Honestly, when I first played it, the battles were really wonky to me. I was like, "What the hell is going on?" I was really kind of jarred by the battles, but I replayed it again and enjoyed it. But what about it do you not really like?
Well, I don't know. Okay, first off, I just found it really boring. Like, ended up playing with my feet just to make it more interesting. But I don't know. First off, it's the Sega CD version. It's pretty ugly. Again, not that I'm a graphics person, but it's jarring how ugly it is sometimes. Like, especially when you're like inside the caves. It's just it's so dark, and I don't know. The music, though technically high recorded quality in the sense that it's good because it's on CD, I think the music isn't good, and it does this annoying thing where it might not happen on the PlayStation version, but at the end of the song, there's a long pause of silence because it's reloading the song, which really takes you out of the game. So the music's bad, and it loops poorly. And I don't know, a lot of things I don't like about it happen a lot in other RPGs, so it's not really fair to say I just hate this because it's a bad game. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying I don't like it because of these reasons, and since I haven't played that many RPGs, I kind of throw all the blame on it. But, like, I remember, like, training this one guy, giving him all this super awesome armor, and then, oh, there's a cutscene and he leaves, and takes all the stuff I just spent all my money on. And that infuriated me, because it happened more than once, where somebody would leave the party.
Sounds like you're a little bit of a scorned lover there.
And, took that helmet and that armor, man. Took that sword, and so that really bothered me because that happened more than once, and I don't know. So that bothered me, and I didn't really like the music, and the graphics were kind of okay. The story was kind of meh, and it might get better later on as they added more cutscenes and things like that. Like, I know even in the Saturn version, I think they added full animation cutscenes, right? So maybe that helped. and I'm sure they improved the graphics, and like with every new iteration, they, technically speaking, improved the game. So maybe if I played a newer version, I would have liked it, but I don't know. And I hated how I don't think there's any descriptions of any items, so you don't know what they do, and they try to explain it by like having, I think you have to look inside the manual, but then they don't tell you what all the items do. So you buy an item or you get an item and you have no idea what it does, and you click on it to see what it does, and then you end up using the item and you have no idea what it did. It's very nondescript in what it does, and the story was kind of boring. I did like some things about it. Like I understand how at the time like the cutscenes would have been really awesome, because even the Sega CD version has minor cutscenes. It's basically just like a picture that they pan up, and some of them have like minor animation. But I can understand that being really cool at the time. And the opening on the English version is awesome because they have like this really bad sounding but epic sounding song, and it's so 90s that it hurts. If anyone listening to it has not heard it, go to YouTube and just type in like Sega CD opening for Lunar, and it's let's just say I enjoyed the opening cutscene more than I enjoyed the rest of the game. Just I don't know, there's just something about it I just couldn't get behind it.
This kind of goes back to what we were discussing a little bit earlier, is how people are very personal and will kind of latch onto the game, and if you don't like it, you're against them for whatever reason. And I find this a lot, is that with somebody who's played an RPG, but for whatever reason it just doesn't interest them after a certain point, people want to be like, oh, well, you missed out on the best part of the game.
You didn't get it, man. You didn't get it.
Well, yeah, and I don't understand that. I don't really... That argument doesn't really hold up to snuff, because to me, if the game isn't interesting enough to keep me to playing it up to this evidently wonderful point in the game, then, you know, it's just whatever, you know, it just doesn't work for me. It's not... I didn't like it, and just because of that, I shouldn't have to force myself to be miserable for like 8 hours of the game to get to a point that's really cool, and then be like, oh, you know, that's great. That's I'm not a sadist or whatever, or masochist or something. I don't want to be like, oh yeah, this is so terrible. Oh wait, it's so great now, kind of thing.
Yeah, I get that. One game that I did want to mention, because it's new, or is, well, newish, on the Sega Genesis, was the Pier Solar. Have you played Pier Solar?
No, I have not. I heard about it, and that's about it.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about it, especially on the YouTube gaming community. It was a really big deal for a while. And what can I say about it? I do like a lot of aspects about it. I like how, because it's not like licensed, there's like swearing and stuff in the game, which is really amusing to see. Like on your Sega Genesis, there'll be like people that'll say, "Oh, you're such an ass," and they'll talk about like brothels and people sleeping with other people and stuff like that. So I like that about it. And they also kind of play with your mind sometimes, because they know what you expect. For example, there's just one part where you go to a watermelon patch, and this farmer's like, "Hey, if you can beat your time and collect all these watermelons and bring them to the other part." And they're like, "Awesome! Like, what do we get? Like some sort of cool sword or something?" And they're like, "No, I just wanted you to help me out." Like, fine, you can't even play. You can't even play now. Get out of here. So you don't even get to play the game, because you would expect to get something from that, right? They're kind of playing on the tropes a little bit, and they do this thing. You would probably know better than I if they've done this in other RPGs, but they have, in their battle system, they have something called gathering. And basically what it is you take one turn to gather energy or whatever. And you can gather up to 5, levels of energy. And each time you gather a piece of energy, it does 2 things. One is it increases your attack power, and 2, it will allow you to use certain attacks or spells. Because there's some attacks or spells, like your more powerful ones. Like to heal everybody, you will need at least 2 levels of gather. And also at 2 levels of gather, your attack power will be like 150% or something instead of 100. So it does those two things, and then also you can gather and give your gather to another character. So if you have somebody who you want to keep attacking, but you want them to gain gather, then you get other characters to gather and give it to them. I don't know if I'm sure other games have done that, but I can't think of any because I'm not.
Yeah, they have a lot of other games have something similar to that. They might not have it quite as detailed like that, where they make the gather be a physical thing in that regard, where you can transfer to somebody else and whatnot. But aspects of that I do know are in a lot of other RPGs.
They do, like, that does make boss battles and stuff more interesting, but it actually makes random battles less interesting because once you figure out that you can beat everybody, almost like random monsters in 2 turns by getting the first turn, everybody gather, and the second turn, give them all the gather to one person who can do a spell that can hit everybody.
Hulk smash!
Yeah, then basically your magic can do, I don't know what the percentage is, but it's something like, like maybe 300%. And then if it's like a fire element and they're weak against fire, then it does even more. So instead of doing like 100, you can do like 800 damage. So instead of wasting your time attacking, you just basically do that. And so that makes random battles kind of boring. But I mean, I'm enjoying the experience overall. Like, I don't regret getting it at all. And it apparently later on it has some issues with like not having enough healing areas, like not enough inns around towns or something. But
regeneration places.
Yeah, but I mean, I haven't gotten to that point yet. I'm about halfway. But I mean, it being an RPG, I still had the problem with grinding. Like, I was 10 hours into the game, and I was starting to forget what the story was about because I would do a part of a story, and then I would have to go and fight things for like 2 hours and die, or like have to run back and heal, and then go back, and then I'd get halfway through a dungeon, and then I'd have to restart and things like that. So I'd keep forgetting not forgetting, but losing my investment in the story, I guess. So I spent 7 hours grinding. So out of playing 10 hours, then I grinded for 7 just to get the story to go a little bit nicer, a little bit smoother. So again, RPGs, shake my fist at you. If they would have just made the game easier, quote unquote easier, then I would have enjoyed it, or I would be enjoying it more. But now that I've done all that grinding, the story is going a lot smoother, and I'm enjoying it a lot more. But I mean, I feel like you shouldn't have to do that, right?
Well, I guess it's kind of the people that made the game are kind of trying to appeal to the fickle hearts of the really kind of hell-bent RPG fans that. It seems to be that for a few of them that an easier RPG is not as fun, or maybe not as dramatic.
Yeah.
And so having to grind, at least, you have the option to spend all this time grinding to get through it, or you have the option of trying your darndest to get through a boss battle of some sort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess so. But I am enjoying it. And one thing I wanted to mention also was a game called Ultima on the NES, and I think the subtitle is Quest for the Avatar or something, or Quest for Avatar or something. Have you played that one?
I have a long, long time ago. That one, I played 1 and 2, I think, but I was really young, so I spent more time killing townspeople and then getting murdered, or fighting the king and then getting murdered.
See,
than I did actually playing the game.
That is the most interesting and best thing about that game, is that for people that don't know, you can fight anybody. You can go up to a townsperson and you'll have the option to like talk, buy, or fight. So you can fight. Like, even I remember fighting a goat at one point. There was like a goat, and I was like, fight goat. And
yes.
I mean, what kind of game can you do that in? I mean, I don't know any other RPG where you can just fight literally anybody you come across, even goats, and not just go up to them and slash them. Like you enter like a turn-based battle with these things. And some people will just, like you said, murder you if you try to attack the king or something. But I mean, some people like the goat or the towns or like the person who runs the inn. They'll just like go down right away. But you can still get money and experience and stuff from them.
But the thing is when you kill those people, the guards come, and the guards are not friendly.
Not in this one.
It's in one of them. Then it's either two or maybe I played a different one. But you kill the inn and like you kill an innkeeper or something, and then the guardsmen will come. And
maybe that was a later one. The one I played.
The game ends.
Oh, from what I remember in this one, or maybe I'm remembering incorrectly, but from what I remember, like if you would kill someone who's important, then and if you left and then came back, they would just be there again. And or a lot of times too, what you could also do is get a lot of people to join your party. And it seemed like, I mean, I'd only played like a couple hours of the game, and I had like a party of like 4 or 5 people or something, because a lot of people, like random people, like, can I join your team? And you have the option of killing them, or you can get them to join your team. And I don't know, I thought that was a really, really cool. I mean, it's kind of a silly aspect, because in real life, if you were going around murdering everybody and their goats, like you said, the guards would come and take you away.
Only the really lunatic ones will be willing to join you at that point.
Yeah, but I thought that was really cool. So we're kind of, I mean, there's so many things I wanted to talk about, but we're kind of winding down here. So I did want to mention one more thing, and then we'll get into like maybe what our top kind of favorites are. Mm-hmm. And one thing I wanted to mention was kind of touching, I wanted to mention this earlier when we were touching upon making games, is RPG Maker. Have you ever used those?
Yes, I have.
And did you actually make anything?
I've did one where I had about, it was more so the skeleton of it, and I think just the skeleton alone of it would have made the game about 10 hours long, and I was probably about halfway there.
Oh, okay. That's pretty good. I mean, I really liked RPG Maker. I mean, I think I used RPG Maker 2000, I think. Mm-hmm. And I really loved this was like the first time as a kid I was like, wow, I can make a game. Like, how cool is that? And some things were really convoluted. Like you needed like to type in like formulas to like figure out how to open up chests and stuff. But I found that it was so difficult to scale. Like to scale, not only to scale the world to be like a correct size, but to scale like enemies, like where you put them and how hard they have to get. Like I couldn't get it to that I wouldn't just get murdered, or things just wouldn't be a breeze. And I find that like maybe not scaling, balancing I should call it. Balancing and scaling I found were so difficult to do, and it really made me appreciate like the work that goes into RPGs.
Yeah, that is a good point to bring up, is that if somebody is interested in doing or making something like an RPG, to dabble in things like RPG Maker, to get the concept of how difficult it can be to plan out the scaling and the balancing issues that will crop up from a game. Because I had that issue where like at first I'd make enemies way too difficult, and you'd be like, okay, let's go, and first enemy kills you, son of a bitch. And then you'd have to spend a lot of time balancing out that stuff. I will say this, though, that the communities for such things as RPG Maker, they're pretty cutthroat, and they're not, a lot of them aren't very welcoming and opening, it feels like to me. They're kind of a bit prudish, I think.
Yeah, I never got into the community or anything. I just try to make a game every now and then, and it's just it wouldn't really go anywhere. And also like pacing too of story was really difficult, and when to get certain items was really difficult to plan. Like everything about it was so difficult to plan.
It is, but I think it's a really nice exercise, particularly like because I like writing, and I kind of converted a story that I'm working on into that game, and so that's why I think it was able to easily get to the 10-hour mark, was because I already had a good idea of the story in my head that I could kind of throw out into this game, and it gave me a different perspective.
I even tried to convert like a book. The Lost Years of Merlin was the book I was basing it off of, which is a book I really love. And I even with basing it off a book, I couldn't, even having like literally a map to work off of and a story, I still couldn't get a good thing going.
Okay.
But still, so just to start to wrap things up here, because we still haven't talked about like what your favorite game would be.
It's a secret.
Well, that makes it really easy.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned it a little bit earlier that you can't. It's really hard to have just the top one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a group of them. I'll rattle off some. This is in no particular order.
Right.
The original Final Fantasy. It's just because it's so much of a part of my childhood. I also really love Rudra no Hiho, or the Treasures of Rudra. It's a Super Famicom game that never made it outside of Japan, unfortunately, and it's really cool. It's got a lot of kind of the Kala Sutra kind of influences, a lot of Indian influences, and it's just a really cool concept for a game. Even though it's very basic in its gameplay, but it's got a cool magic system and stuff. I guess more kind of a little bit more actiony would be Terranigma. I love Terranigma.
Which one's
never made it to the States,
okay.
Unfortunately.
That would explain why I don't know much about it.
Yeah, it's have you ever heard of Illusion of Gaia?
Yep. That's the Super Nintendo, right?
You have Soul Blazer is the first game, Illusion of Gaia is the second game, and then Terranigma is the third game. And for whatever freaking reason, Terranigma never made it to America. But I love that one. I love Lufia 2, and also Lufia the Legend Returns on the Game Boy Color. Really awesome games. Dragon Quest V, I really dig. Xenogears, Xenoblade, and Xenosaga 1, 2, and 3. Really love those games. Let's see here.
Is there anything anything particular
really,
that anything in particular that like links those together? I mean, you said like you love music, so those all probably have really good music to you. But is there anything else that really connects those?
For each of those games? What?
I mean, I knew that you threw a lot of them out there, but
oh well, Final Fantasy, big piece of my childhood. Rudra no Hiho, I love the Indian references. I love that kind of because I like kind of that ancient culture kind of references and stuff, and it's really cool how it works into the game. Plus, the game is broken into over a span of 15 days for 3 different storylines, and each of the storylines were written by 3 different people. So they have their own kind of nuances to them, and the stories are all different in their own way.
That's kind of cool.
Terranigma is just a really well put together game. I like the action in it, but it's the music, the setting. You're going across the planet, bringing life to the world. It's fantastic. Xenogears, I really love the philosophical aspects of it, the influences of Nietzsche and of what the hell is his name? Freud, the Freudian bits in there. A lot of people don't like it. However, it really resonated with me. It's one of those games that you could play it once, play it again. You'll find new things that you didn't quite catch before. Play it a third time, you'll find new things you didn't quite catch before. It's one of those where you could play it over and over and usually find at least one new thing in the game, which would be like, oh man, that's so awesome. For the Xenosaga games, it wasn't so much that, it was more so I just really liked the space bit of it. I enjoy space and RPGs, and I think it did a really fun job with that. And with Xenoblade, I really liked the concept of the world and traveling on the giant god, and like the last story as well. And gotta give a brosive shout out to Final Fantasy IX, because that to me is one of the more enjoyable Final Fantasy games as well.
9?
9, I really, really, really like 9. It's more of a callback to the older Final Fantasy games. It's not necessarily trying to be unique and special, but it is special. But it's not trying to be like, unique how 7 and 8 are, and like over the top ridiculous different and stuff. It's just kind of a callback to the old school days for it, and it worked really well.
You got quite the list there.
Yeah, and I also love, for the most part, a majority of the Fire Emblem games, but those are more strat RPGs, so...
Yeah.
Not very many people like strat RPGs, so...
I didn't like them previously, but with playing Tactics Advance, I might try to get in them a little bit more. I played also Advance Wars, one of them. Can't remember which one. And I enjoyed that to a point, so I don't know. I think it would have to be...
Fire Emblem, the newest one for the 3DS would be a bit more opening, but the older ones, they've got the, your character reaches 0, they're gone for good kind of thing, so that might not appeal to you.
No big deal. So, like I said, running out of time here, but really quickly, I'll just list off a couple of mine and why I like them, and you're going to notice a significant difference in my favorites and your favorites for sure, and it'll kind of like go more towards what the kind of gamer I am. So one of the games that a lot of people don't think of as an RPG is the Pokemon series, but I mean it definitely is. I mean you have a party and they all get attacks and experience and things like that. So the first couple series, so Red, Blue, and Gold, Silver, are definitely some of my favorite. And part of the reason for that is they're so replayable in the sense that you technically have, in the second game, like 250 or more potential party members. And potential combinations is, I don't know how many combinations that is. So I found them extremely replayable in that sense. So I always wanted to restart. I mean, even though I've played through Pokemon Blue probably in my lifetime, probably like 6 times, every time I've still had different party members. So, except for the, starting 3. So, that's what I found so interesting about that. And, I mean, part of it, too, is also being, caught up in the hype of, the Pokemon craze that is...
Poke fever!
Yeah, just still going. It's never going to end. And so another one of my favorite RPGs is like Chrono Trigger, but we've already talked about that. And my other favorite is probably Paper Mario. And I don't know if you've played the Paper Mario games.
I've played the first one about 10 hours, but then I just never got back to it. I moved to Japan. So kind of couldn't do it then.
Okay, that's a good excuse.
But I like the diverging Mario RPG ones with the Superstar Saga ones.
Superstar Saga is really good too. The problem I had with Superstar Saga,
games,
the problem I had with Superstar Saga was that I couldn't beat the final boss because you beat Bowletta or Bowser.
The second form?
Yeah, and then she eats you, and you go down to 1 health, and then she does like 3 or 4 attacks, and you have to dodge. And if you, because you have to control Mario and Luigi, if either of them gets hit, you're pretty much screwed, because then the other person has to put them on their back to hold them, and then your jumps are ill-timed. And I think I tried it a couple times, and I was like, well, that's fine. I mean, I got through most of the game, whatever.
The third one's really, really awesome. If you do get the chance,
it's the Inside Story.
Try that one, Inside Bowser's Story.
Yeah. But I like Paper Mario more, and part of it was too because my family got so wrapped up in it. Like everybody in the family was playing, and as soon as one person would beat, sorry, I shouldn't say everybody in the family. My 2 brothers and my sister were all playing this game, and anytime one of us was done, like the file would cycle out to somebody else. And somebody else would instantly start another file, and we played it so much we broke it. And part of it was that it was, like I said, it had a lot of things in RPGs that I love. It was short. It doesn't have grinding. Like you start off, your attacks do like 1 damage. So it was really simple. It had charming characters. I mean, the concept of it being like an RPG where everything is made of paper. I mean, I was like, oh, outside of the box for once. That's kind of interesting. I like that. And, you know, it had the familiar characters, but they were a little bit different. And the writing in the Paper Mario series is really good. It's really funny and, like, charming. And, I don't know, I really like the themes. And we got so wrapped up in it. Like, we ended up, like, for all of our birthdays and Christmases and stuff, we ended up getting, like, clay. Like, just modeling clay and, like, making, like, our own, like, little Paper Mario towns with, like, shops and everything. And we just got so wrapped up in it. And I don't know what it is, but it's, I think, like, for me, like, what makes an enjoyable RPG is, like I said, all those things about, you know, has to be relatively short and relatively quote-unquote easy with, like, not a lot of grinding. And there has to be a lot of charm there. Because for me, like, I love the characters in Paper Mario as you know, no pun intended, as flat as they are. You know, I love them more than, you know, that I love some of the characters in Legend of Dragoon, despite the fact that technically they're more fleshed out and they have background stories and voice acting and, you know, things like that. So, I don't know what it is, but for me, like, it has to be charming. And I guess a lot of the RPGs I like are, you know, for kids, like I said, like Pokemon and Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi, and Chrono Trigger is a fairly relatively, you know, easy RPG, so I don't know, just kind of attests to what kind I like. And if there's anybody listening who knows of any of the RPGs that go into those categories, let me know, because I'm always looking for those, because I'd like to play that more than I'd like to play, like I said, I really like the look of Dragon Warrior 8, but I can't commit like 120 hours or however long it takes in my life to play that game. Like, how, like, you know how long it would take me to do that? Like, probably like 2 or 3 years. I don't have 2 or 3 years to play that game. Like, like I said, I've been playing Final Fantasy Tactics Advance for over a year. I don't know. I don't know, man. Anyways, so, I don't know, part of the reason that I want to have this talk is because I know we have extremely different tastes in RPGs, but we still, I mean, admittedly, RPGs are not my favorite genre, because of a lot of those things I mentioned with time and grinding and stuff, but, I mean, I do still like them. I mean, I can't think of a genre of games that I've played that I don't like, but some I like more than others, and RPGs is probably lower just because of those things I said, but I don't know. I still wanted to hear your take from an RPG lover, and I was considering bringing in other people to talk, so we could get more of a, I guess, what's
An array of opinions?
No, not so much that. That's the reason why I didn't bring them in. It's because I figured it would just be you guys talking about, like, the awesome JRPGs, and I'd be like, but Pikachu's cool, and when Mario's paper, he's cool too. And you guys would talk about your epic stories and sweet orchestral music and stuff, so I decided to not, because I figured that you guys would hijack it, which would be interesting, but maybe another
the purpose.
maybe another day. But yeah, no, it was still really enjoyable, and I also wanted to get the perspective of somebody who loves RPGs to try to talk about the things that I don't like about them. And I figured too, also, if I had more than one person who did like them, then you guys would just gang up on me. So, so that's why it's just the two of us this time. But I was considering getting, like, Crow, and I tried to get Dinky Dana in on this as well, but he was busy. So, you know, it was still really enjoyable. I liked having this talk, and I hope you enjoyed this talk as well. Then.
Yeah, I appreciate you thinking of me for this, and I like how, even though you may not be the biggest fan of the genre, you at least still kind of approach it with an open mind and not just, well, I don't like this, so bugger off kind of thing. I think that's being completely just dismissive of something doesn't really help kind of explain to yourself why you may not like certain things in that genre.
I think understanding what you don't like is I mean, really important for someone who really is interested in playing games as, you know, a hobby or something that's interesting. Is explain to yourself why you don't like it. Don't, you know, talk to somebody who it's their favorite game of all time. You'll just end up fighting. first sit down with yourself or somebody who can rationally talk about games and talk about, what you don't like about it. And like I said, like I'm always open to playing new things, and part of the reason that I'm not that into these games is, like I said, part of them is expensive, but if Final Fantasy or Dragon Warrior, all those games were sitting on my doorstep right now, yeah, I'd give them a shot. But until that happens, I don't know. My fiance does have a lot of the Dragon quests on DS, so I might. I don't know if 5 is one of them. If 5 is one of them, I'll give it a shot whenever I'm done Fantasy Star. But I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you're not taking me as so much of a cynic. I thought I was going to come off as really cynical, and some of the people here listening to this might still think I'm coming off as being really cynical, but that's the way it is. I can't love everything you love.
Just maybe critical, because you might maybe hear, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I love the East series, but I am really critical, and people are like, Taylor, I thought you liked the East series, and I'm like, blah, 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 I don't like this about it, I don't like this, but I still really enjoy it. So I mean, I think it just kind of, what's the word? Kind of demonstrates how much of a kind of passion you have, a passion that you have for gaming.
Well, hopefully that comes across to everyone else. Because I mean, the last talk I did too, I know I'm coming off as kind of, because the last talk was about Final Fantasy, I know I was coming off as negative on that one too, but I just like kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit with people who can take it. I mean, if you try that on anywhere else on the internet, like, you'll just get eaten, but I knew you're a rational person, so that's why you're here.
Well, thanks again for inviting me on. I enjoyed the talk.
Excellent.
I hope that everybody listening enjoyed it as well.
All 3 of them definitely loved it. One of them being me. So thanks again for making time on your busy schedule and, communicating with me all these months of trying to get this to work.
Yeah, no problem. No problem doing Skype tag and finally working something out there.
Yeah, cool. And like I said, I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. This has been Silver Mongoose Videos. Remember, classic gaming never gets old.
My favorite flavor of ice cream is pumpkin ice cream.